last time about how it can increase performance. Mental skills, what I mean with mental skills is like the actual skills that we teach as performance psychologists that helps deal with pressure, deal with frustration, deal with all emotions really that you feel during performance that can be negative and like stop you from performing at your best. If you ever felt, and usually if you're humans, you have felt it at some point, that you played worse in one specific or like multiple official matches than you play in practice, mostly mental and some stuff that was happening in your brain was what caused it. So what I usually go through in order is understanding pressure. That's really important. Again, we'll speed run the explanation, but if you guys want more details, we can go into it. And then I'll show you a couple of mental skills that we actually use, especially in esports, but mental skills are used. These are skills that you could use in anything in life, as long as there is some sort of pressure and like, need to perform and you're feeling that pressure, to calm yourself down and to put your focus back on the game, which is the name of the game with mental skills training. I'll get into details about that. So broke it down into how to perform under pressure, which is one of the most important things, obviously, in our domain. And also talk a little bit about like, how do you guys perceive failure? Which is also a very, very important topic when we talk about performance at the highest level. So again, I'm going to speed run the explanation a little bit, but it's really important before we move into like actual mental skills that I can show you, that you understand like, where this really pressure comes from. The explanation that I like to give usually to players when they tell me that, they're feeling, some sort of like tension before the match, it's harder to focus, their heart racing a lot, and they tend to be like what we call overactivated, which is like, a bit too emotional, a bit too high on everything, on tension, on everything. They end up tunneling on during the matches, on very important matches in LAN or that kind of stuff. One thing that is very important if you want to develop mental skills is to be able to accept that. What I mean with accepting is that we realize as humans, the feelings that we have when we are under pressure, so when we perform, is sort of like normal. It's ingrained in yours and my DNA, in the sense of like, it's actually what you feel in terms of pressure is actually a survival instinct. It comes down to like, the examples I always give is like 10,000 years ago. If you were, let's say, or even a bit longer, if you were like a hunter-gatherer still, you might picture yourself like that, and you were like, in the forest or whatever, you were just trying to get something to eat from a tree or something, right? All of a sudden you see a bush, next to you, something moving, not so far away from you. The first reaction that you're going to have as human is to freeze and to be like, shit, what is it? Is it something that actually wants to eat me? Is it going to be like, fucking big tiger or whatever that is going to try to eat me? You're going to get that rush of sort of like adrenaline, but what we call the freeze, sort of like the fight, flight, or freeze reaction. And most of the time you're going to get away, and you're going to get like, some negative thoughts that come into mind of like, oh shit, what is it? Something that wants to eat me. I don't want to die. You're going to run away. Now, the thing is like 9 times out of 10, maybe the bush moving was nothing, but 1 time out of 10, it's actually a predator that wants to eat you. So getting the fuck away was the right call. That's how you survived. That's why I say it's a survival instinct. Is like the people that felt that fear and were cautious survived, versus the guys who did not feel any pressure actually died eventually. So genetically speaking, we are all evolved to feel fear and to feel, that we want to disengage from dangerous situations. The issue that we have nowadays is that we are not anymore in any situations that, or like most of the time we're not in situations that are actually a danger to us, to our lives, but we did not evolve out of that mechanism. We still have it inside of us. And it's impossible for your body to understand whether you're in a situation that you might get killed, or you're performing on the stage in esports where like you're actually super safe, you're just feeling a lot of pressure. You're sending the same signals to your brain, meaning you're going to get the same reaction. And usually when you have a huge underperform, if you ever played on the LAN and it was like too much, or like some match that was really important to you and you felt like you underperformed, most likely that's what happened. To some degree, you get into that, mechanism of danger, and the consequences of that, sadly, is that it's very hard to focus. It's very hard to play the way you want to play, because your body's focusing on survival. So it's sending you signals, more blood to your arms and legs so you can run. You're going to be scanning for threats instead of being able to focus and remember strats. So like if someone talks a bit too loud, you're going to tend to be more jumpy and everything. If you ever felt stuff like that, or like a ball in your stomach, same principle of like, if you ever felt that before a match or anything, just your body sending resources outside of just your digestion system, and your digestion system not understanding, and because it's your body sort of mind connections wanting you to survive. So like these are all reactions that we can explain and understand now. And what I mean with like you have to be able to accept that is that there's really no fighting against some of the symptoms. If you try to only think positively, it's not going to work because the pressure is real. The pressure is there. If you try to, totally avoid them, not going to work either. And so the way the most, and we're going to see some examples, the best athletes work around that is by accepting the fact that this is a human feeling and everything. So whether you experience frustration and anger, whether you experience fear, whether you played very badly and you're feeling bad about yourself and everything. The first step of mental skill training usually is to accept that, to put some distance of like, yeah, it's normal, it's a human reaction. And then to find a way to reset and put your attention back on the game. We're going to watch some examples. I want you guys to hear some of the best athletes. You're probably going to recognize some talking about it and talking about how do they master mental skill training. Before we move on, is the expectation sort of clear, or like, are you guys sort of like understanding it? We can move on, or do you want me to like re-explain something? It wasn't clear.
No, we can move on. Yes, we can move.
We good?
On.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So how to work around it? So 2 examples: Kobe Bryant, legends in their own sports. We'll take a look at it. It's going to be like short videos of them sort of talking about emotions, of them talking about like how do they actually dealt with the high pressure that they were facing. Can you guys hear the video, by the way? Is it working?
No.
You don't have sound on?
No.
Just images.
If I play it like that, it's not working? Oh yeah, it's because actually the screen share doesn't work as well as it does with okay, I'll reshare my screen. And then I need to share this one, I think. And you guys will let me know.
Yes, we can see.
Understand that thing. What I try to do
is the sound working as well?
Still.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay, nice. So I'll just have to reshare every time. But yeah.
Understand that things come and go, emotions come and go. The important thing is to accept them all, to embrace them all, and then you can choose to do with them what you want versus being controlled by emotion. A lot of times I've seen players, even myself, when I was younger, being consumed by a particular fear. And to the point where you're saying, okay, it's not good to feel fear. I shouldn't be nervous in a situation like that. And it does nothing but grow versus stepping back and saying, yeah, I am nervous about the situation. Yeah, I am fearful about the situation. Well, what am I afraid of? And then you kind of unpack it. And then it gives you the ability to look at it for really what it is, which is nothing more than your imagination running its course.
I think it's a good video to watch. If you guys have ever watched, or like come across reels or some stuff about Kobe Bryant, the guy is really known to be extremely tough under pressure and to be the guy who carries his team. And it was like one of the superstars and legends of NBA before he sadly passed away. It's a good thing then that he talks about basically what he's saying in that video is that what we realized as well in mental skill training over the years is that you cannot avoid pressure. If you, and some of us, and myself including when I was playing, have some sort of coping mechanisms that is more so about avoiding pressure. If you go on about this way, it's less effective than techniques that are actually facing it forward, which is what we're going to see after that, right? But if you're like, oh yeah, it's not that much, or you don't look at the Twitch counts to see how many thousands of people are watching you and everything. If you try to avoid that pressure, eventually it's going to come back in your face when you're going to be playing. It's going to be high stakes. Usually not the best to do, as I said, and the best is usually to like actually find a way to reset, which is what another GOAT is gonna talk about. I think I'm gonna have to reshare the screen again. So I'll do that real quick, and you guys can join. All right, and I'll play. Let me know if the sound doesn't work, but otherwise we can just walk. So this is Novak Djokovic, again, one of the greatest of all time, if not the best player in the world ever in tennis, and one of the guys that is really known for his mental skill abilities, and he never really throws a match. He's always, playing into the opponent's mind and staying very strong, and he's one of the guys that practices mental skills the most on the planet.
You stay here, in present, here and now. And people have been always talking about, forget about the past, don't think about the future, be in the present moment. I don't think that's possible, in reality, because our mind is, I like to call it a traveler, it likes to travel past, present, future all the time. What if scenarios. And on the court, it's probably even more intense. I think it's also not possible to keep, when somebody tells you, be steady, don't think about this. If someone tells you don't think about it, it's almost certainly you will think about it. So what I think is well, probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned about, I guess, mental strength is that, if you lose your focus, if you you're not present, things start to go the wrong way for you, it's fine. Accept it and then come back. And I think that recovery of how long you stay in that emotion is what differentiates you from maybe others. So I think the recovery is more important than actually working hard to stay in the present, because it's almost impossible to stay all the time in present. We always think, what's going to happen? It's this, am I going to win or not? Or
Really like this video because he basically explains how mental skills works. I'll go back to the presentation. And again, he's a guy who worked on his mental skills a lot. But you get here the explanation of how it really works. There is a phase of accepting negative thoughts and emotions when you want to use a mental skill. One of the mental skills actually that I'm going to show you is one that works extremely well in your game because you have time to reset, and we've been using it in Counter-Strike. And in tennis, more or less the same. It depends on like how long do you have and how much time do you have to actually use what we call a reset button. First phase is usually to accept negative thoughts and emotions. Not accepting in the way that I am indeed bad, as I'm telling myself that I'm bad because I just missed a shot or whatever. I'm also accepting that the frustration or the fear or that kind of stuff is part of the process. If you miss and you feel frustrated and you feel angry or you feel fearful and your confidence goes down, the most important part of the mental skill is actually to be able to take a step back and understand this is a human reaction. This is nothing that I can really do about. It's normal, it's fine. Now I'm going to do my routine to reset, because that's what Novak Djokovic was talking about. He's like, it's fine to feel those emotions. He feels them himself. If you're a fan of tennis and you ever watched him play, he rages, on the court all the time. But the incredible thing with him is that he can miss a point, absolutely rage for like 5 seconds, and be extremely focused for the next point. So he's not going to have that snowball of like, I missed, and then it's going downhill. It's going to be like, I missed, emotions go down, and then he refocuses. That's the whole point of mental skill training. Mental skill training is always about eventually putting your focus back on the game. We've noticed that positive self-talk, thinking that you're the best, it's great, but it's not enough. Realistically, what matters the most is for you to be able to focus as well as you can and to be in what we call the zone, where it flows naturally. You can think about strategy, you can anticipate what the enemy is going to do, you can think clearly, basically. So you're in the best emotional state possible. And when that fluctuates during the game, the most important thing is okay, can I analyze it and be like, okay, I'm not in my zone. What can I do to go back in it, right? So I'll show you 2 mental skills, or 2 things that we work on usually. Mental skills are something there's a wide variety of them. Some of them can be sort of mastered in one day, and others it takes a year. The good thing about mental skill, if you're someone who's always been wondering about that because, perhaps, as I said, you felt that moment of fear during a match and everything, and you're like, oh shit, I'm not good at handling this. Understand that we call it skills for a reason. It's something that if you work on it, the same as if you work on your game skills, you're going to get better. For some people, it's easier than others, just like a natural genetic and based on like sort of like your life. But no matter where you start from, if you work on it, you can 100% get better. That's the right thing. So as I said, reset button, I'll go through it fairly fast so we have time for like to answer your questions and everything as well after that. 3 phases. Basically what I was telling you is like you have a phase of like acceptance, awareness of yourself. So let's say you just fucked up. You missed a 1v1 that you should have not taken. You pushed like you were greedy, missed a 1v1, you lost your teams the round. Perhaps you're feeling frustration, perhaps you're feeling lower confidence. You're like, shit, I really fucked up. My teammates are going to think I'm stupid and everything. So you're feeling all of these emotions, usually negative. You're going to have negative self-talk, as I said, just in your head, right? Maybe you're going to feel some physical tension. So you're going to have a lot of stuff happening. Maybe you're breathing, that kind of stuff and everything. So you have that phase of awareness of be like, okay, I'm there. I'm not there anymore. Like emotionally, like these things are happening. I can note them down. I can accept them, you know, as like, okay, this is something that happens. It's normal. First phase. Third phase is going to be to refocus eventually. And so what we put in between, what you see here is like in chronological order, in time order of like first, this is happening. Then we want to get to this. We put a separation there. That's what we call the reset button. That's the actual mental skills to put a separation in time for you to be able to refocus. And we're going to use for that physical stuff that you can do to actually relax your body. And remember what I was saying about like you enter a state of danger to bring that level down through, you will see breathing, through relaxation, through everything, and a mental state as well to bring it down. The both are links. So basically, like if you're high on emotions, the idea is to bring you down enough so that you can actually refocus on the game and be back on the game. So one of the way we see it and how to put distance from your thoughts and your emotions is to categorize them. So one of the things that works extremely well in traditional sports, and it works also very well in esports, is to classify your thoughts in zones. So like, let's say you're on a LAN, you know, where is your attention? Really, because all that matters is like, where is your attention? Is it on distractions? Like, you know, you're looking at the crowd, you're like impressed by how many people are watching you play, or like some people are yelling or whatever. So you're outside the game, right? That's what we classify in the yellow zone. The gray zone is more or less when you're like just not thinking about the game at all and you're absolutely distracted. To be fair, it's something that doesn't happen that much when you're under pressure. Usually under pressure, what's happened is you're distracted or you're in the red zone. The red zone is most important because what we call evaluation of performance means you're in a negative self-talk or like judging your performance. Of like, let's say like, you know, again, like you just fucked up your play, you pushed your 1v1, and you're going to be like, oh, that was so stupid to do. I should have done that. Now they're back one round. Maybe they can win. If you start thinking about results, your mind is not on the game anymore. Your mind is on more pressure and you're going to play worse, 100%. So it's about being able to tell yourself, okay, you have that phase of awareness of like, oh shit, actually now I'm in the red zone. It's fine. It's normal. That happens. Okay, now let's use my reset button and let's try to refocus. It's something, reset button is something that you can do, like you can have multiples. You can have one that, you know, take only 5 seconds, and you can have, if you have like really bad map and you have like 1 minute to chill, you can also do like a reset, what we call a reset routine or ritual to refocus. But like here in the examples, what I want to show you is like sort of like a fast one where like you have 10 seconds, right? So as I said, like you're gonna have a physical component, a mental component to it. All of those are designed to bring your emotions down to a normal state where you can refocus. So breathing is something, if you ever had this, you know, recommendation of like breathe when you're under pressure, one of the best things you can do actually, and one of the skills, quote unquote, that you can master fairly fast, or you can use at least fairly fast, is breathing. It's the best way to regulate your body. I was telling you about that state of fear that you feel when you go too high on emotions. Your body scans, or like your body mind, but like scans your body as well and analyze the signals you sent him. So if you're not breathing properly, it's going to think you're under danger. If you're tensing yourself up physically, it's also going to think you're under pressure, and it's going to stay in that state of you cannot focus, right? So through slow breathing, deep breath, or box breathing is something that like I could go into detail if you guys don't know about it later. You can bring that arousal level down, and it's going to be easier to refocus. Some of the stuff that we use to reset, you know, let's say you just died and you have 15, 20 seconds for yourself. Close your eyes. So really put a stop in time in between the moment where you felt the emotions, the moment you're going to be refocused. Basically, you can use all of that like players like to have like something very ritualized, especially in Counter-Strike, and I think it's the same in Valorant. Like you touch your necklace, you touch tattoo. Basically, you're creating yourself a routine. You can do whatever you want, basically. All I'm listing here is like stuff that you could use for your own routine, right? And you couple that with a mental component of self-talk. For some, what works is, to be motivational about yourself. For others, motivational doesn't really work. So it's more about what we call instructional. It's like already putting your focus back on the game. It's like, okay, next round, go next, whatever, right? And the idea is that you're going to couple that. You're going to just pick what you want based on, for instance, that list, and just create a routine. I'll show you one routine that I've used in the past, and some players have used as well, in that order. Let's say, like, I fucked up. I lost my one-on-one. I'm very frustrated. I'm going to have that face of awareness. I close my eyes. I join my hands. Deep breath through the nose. And then I do what a mental skill that's called anchoring is. I basically, through repetition of like a movement. So what I do when I have my hands joined like that, I squeeze sort of like to, get that physical tension up. And then I do my self-talk of like going next and everything. And then I just let it out. So basically, I'm just sort of like tensing my body up and then breathe out and doing some physical relaxation on my shoulders and everything to sort of like reset the state. A couple of things that are interested here is like closing your eyes. Closing your eyes, it's easier to focus on yourself if you have time. Taking your hands off the keyboard and mouse is usually a good idea to just create a reset, right? And the skill of anchoring is something that is great because through repetition, you're actually creating neuronal connection between the movement of like squeezing and bringing your arousal levels down. So the more you do it, the more it's going to be, and this is something that you can sort of practice on your own, the more you're going to do it, the more efficient it's going to be at, reducing the pressure when you really fucked up. So that's one idea, but it can be something very much smaller, right? It could just be one deep breath, you close your eyes, one deep breath, and then a self-talk that you chose, right? And the self-talk can be anything else. I just gave you example. So that's what we call, in essence, a reset button. That's what most of the professional players at the highest level, especially in games like Counter-Strike and Valorant, use to reset when they fucked up. And again, the third and by far perhaps the most important part is really like, why do you do all this? To put your focus back on the game. So usually I always ask players, what is one thing that you can do once you've done that? If you're still dead, can you look at the map? Can you give, insightful, infos to your teammates? Can you think about next round, what you're going to do? You need to put your focus back on the game, because if you don't, naturally, even if you do your reset button, your mind is going to, that's what Novak Djokovic was saying, right? Your mind is naturally going to go back to, oh, I fucked up and everything. And to be fair, even if it does, it's something, again, you have to accept. But as much as possible, once this is done, you try to put your focus back on the game. The key lesson here is like, you cannot really control where your mind goes. All you can try to do when you're in that state is to bring it down and put your focus back on the game. If it's something that you practice a lot, that reset button, eventually you're going to get really good at handling it. But yeah, so that's one example, reset button, very, very efficient. That's one of the first things I'd work with players, because that's the most direct, straight up, you can use in game when the pressure is too high. Another thing that I work on with players, I'll go over this one very quickly, activation check. So like, let's say you're on a scale to 1 to 10 in your match. It's an idea of like being aware of yourself. It's like, what's happening? Let's say you're in the zone from 1 to 10. The zone when you perform the best for you is a 7 or 8, right? 9 and 10, you're overactivated, you're too much, 1 to 6, you're underactivated, you're just not giving enough. And so it's something that I work with players recently of like, okay, can you have that face of awareness of like, first of all, can you note down what happens when you're overactivated? Usually what happens to players is like, you start rushing their communication, getting very high pitch in communication, and then called child everything here is like being too cocky or like autopiloting the game and everything. Under activation is usually less communication, less confidence, that kind of stuff. And to have a couple of stuff prepared in case that happens. So here you can see some examples. It's a lot about breathing. What can you do in game? What can you do outside the game during a break? So like the example I gave for this player here, when he is underactivated, it's basically what I told you guys about last session, doing physical activation to bring that level up if it's down. So here we're talking really about activation, not really frustration or anything, just like the level of energy that you get, really. And if you're overactivated, use breathing to bring it down, basically. So that, again, I'm going very fast over it, but just so we have time to discuss. But that's how basically you deal with 2 ways you can deal with pressure using mental skill training. Now, one of the other thing I wanted to go about is like, how do you handle failure? Going over this very quickly, I think perhaps we can talk about it more so like in discussions, through discussion with you guys, because that was like one of the things that is usually a problem in terms of like you guys are all professional players coming up on the big scene and everything. By nature, you're going to want to do most of the things perfect. When you're in game, you don't want to fail. You want to execute as much as possible, the best you can. The issue with that mindset eventually is that it creates a lot of frustration that keeps you from playing well. I think one of you guys sent me a question last time about sort of that, about like, I'm getting very frustrated. I have it here, I think. So I'll go over it, like I'll just give you the template here, and I've noted down the question. This was the question that I've got from you guys. So been struggling a bit with tilt and frustration during ranked games. So we can analyze that. You'll see either it's during a ranked game, so this is the actual issue that you had. And then let's say it's a problem that you have during the team practice or anything, right? Sometimes teammates don't listen, we lose rounds because of throws, bad coordinations, and it really gets to me. Trying to stay calm, and the tilted or raging internally messes up with my performance. The idea is like, are you able, and it's sort of like what Novak Djokovic was talking about, to sort of like accept mistakes and failure as something that is natural? When you look at tennis players, they only win like 50% of their rounds. Like, you know, when you see a point or like a point being played, a guy who like Federer, if you know him, that won mostly, again, like one of the greatest in tennis, won most of his game. He was like 80% of his games, actually won only 50% of the points that he played during matches on average. So he missed basically half of the time. The same way you're playing, if you're playing Valorant or like any other game, you're going to miss a lot, you know, like you're going to like, you know, try to take your 1v1, you're just going to miss it. The problem is like, it's the problem of like playing at professional level. You're very perfectionist because you want to be the best, but also the nature of and the reality of the sport is like you're also playing against guys who are good, and there is like some randomness in our games as well and everything. So you cannot win all of your 1v1s. If you get frustrated over it and then it gets you off your game and you cannot focus, you're going to spiral down. You're going to spiral down, which is more or less what the problem is here as well in ranked, right? What I try to say is like, first of all, like mistakes and everything. I had another video to show you, but I don't think we're going to have the time. It's something that like you need to be able to accept. It's part of the process. Mistakes are made basically to be analyzed and be like, okay, is there something like you see on the list here that I causing that mistakes and that can make myself better? It's the idea of like, you know, if you're losing a 1v1 or if you're losing a map, if you're losing a scrim, a match, can you really learn from it? Is that something that you can learn from? Listed some of the stuff that are like, you know, normally what's happening. Is it a game sense issue of like, you know, well, we didn't know enough about the map, or like they played a better strategy. Can you review it, get better at it, right? Set up goals in practice to get better at it. Was it an attention problem or frustration or fear of failure problem? In any cases, you have, and that's why I categorized this to this, to understand like when you have a message like this, you can actually put it back into context of like what can I actually do to fix that, right? If I've made a mistake, or like if my teammates are making a mistake, is there something that we can do? Usually there always is. Now as you can see, like here, it's categorized of like, and the real issue really is mental skills on that end. Like if you try to stay calm while you're tilted, it's never going to work. You have to have that phase of like, okay, I am tilted, I accept it. Maybe there's a showing of frustration. Maybe I punch my desk or whatever, and then I reset. That's the problem with this sentence. It's like, I try to stay calm. It's not going to work if you don't have that sort of like mental skills that, you know, I've showed you a bit earlier and everything. Now, the problem, like if I have to answer this question, and we can go into details about questions after that if you want, is that if you're in a team environment, you can control a lot of the things that are listed here on these questions. Like teammates don't listen, okay, we can have a discussion. Maybe it's about attention, not listening to come. Bad coordination, it's something that can be fixed through VOD reviews, all that kind of stuff. And then all of the other stuff can be linked to team atmospheres and team values, or team culture in general, that we're going to talk about like in another session. If you're in ranked, you don't have control over all of that. If your teammates are trash, there isn't much that you can do. The problem is more so about like how much you put your attention on yourself and what you can control versus putting your attention on stuff that you cannot control. So usually when you get into ranked is by far one of the worst thing that you can do to practice. It's the only thing that's the problem with esport that you can do to practice your mechanics. It's also one of the worst because you play with teammates that are significantly worse than you usually. And if you were to see that in traditional sports, if you had like professional players playing with randoms, they would tilt as well. So the idea is really when you play ranked, you have to put into perspective what it really gets to you and focus on what you can control. What are you playing ranked for? If you're only focusing on I want to gain LPs or I want to gain ranked, you're most likely going to get frustrated. If you focus on like what you can actually control during the game, which is your performance, accepting that you're not going to be able to win every game because sometimes your teammates are going to be too bad, you're going to be in a much better mindset already. Paradoxically, you're going to win more games as well if you have that mindset. If you try to focus on what can you actually control yourself, if you play with a duo, that's already erases some of the stuff that you cannot control because you're playing with someone who's better. I don't know if you can do that. If that's something that you can do, definitely do so, and also accept like
Your
much about
voice.
it. Yeah.
Your voice. I
So
think disconnected for
yeah.
a bit.
Yeah.
The last sentence. Can you just repeat the last sentence? It DC'd, I think. Your
Uh,
voice.
Yeah, what I meant is like the only thing you can really do in this kind of situation is focus on yourself. The thing that you can do to focus on yourself is really, are you practicing something in particular when you go into ranked? Have something else in goal than just I want to win LPs. Let's say like, I want to at least do less mistakes individually, or I want to, ranked is a very good thing that I use personally as a performance coach for players to practice their mental skills because most of them get frustrated. So like, can you accept that frustration and refocus on what you can do as an individual? Or like, you can play with what I said, like you can play with someone else as well to reduce the pool of players that are going to be bad. Focus on what you can control basically is the name of the game when you play a game of ranked. Well, like, as I said, like you're going to be better than 90% of the players in the lobby, or even more. So, if you start focusing on them, and it's the same when you're playing in a team environment, you're kind of toasted. You're not going to be able to focus. You're going to get frustrated. If you focus on yourself, what can you learn from it? What can I practice? With the clear goal, eventually it's going to get better. So yeah, that was a bit of a longer explanation because mental skill is a lot. If you guys are fine and want to, I'm fine with going extra because it's been 30 minutes. If you have any questions about anything that I just said that wasn't clear and everything, we can go over it for sure. All right. Yeah, did somebody raise their hands? I think I saw it, but. Well, I saw a hand raised, but then I saw it like going down
He
again.
typed
But
a question in the chat, I think. I've
sorry.
been thinking about how emotions affect performance. My past coaches taught us not to show emotions during the game, and I understand it's to stay focused, but sometimes, especially when I'm grinding for a goal like Radiant or top 100, emotions naturally come out, whether it's frustration, excitement, or pressure.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask how exactly do emotions affect gameplay, and what's the right way to manage them while still staying driven and competitive? It's Sahil Dubey's question, Max.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very good question. I think it comes down to naturally, coaches aren't, especially in esports, they aren't really formed and trained in understanding how pressure works, how the psychological game sort of works. Sadly, then the advice of don't focus on and like don't show emotions and like stay away from your emotion and just focus on the game is the advice that we were giving like 10, 20 years ago. Our coaches were, before they were really aware of like what is actually going on. It's the worst advice, really. As you saw in the videos of like, you have top tier players, the best players in the world in their domain. We're really talking about greatest of all times, Kobe Bryant, Novak Djokovic, talking about the fact that if you, and I could show you like examples of like many more players and coaches talking about it. If you try to stay away from your emotions, if you try to avoid them and not think about them, they're going to come back and hit you in the face. It's impossible as a human being not to feel those emotions. That's what I was telling you, like when we go back into mental skill training and the phase of like, the reset button, the first step really is to accept, when I put like here, is to accept the negative emotions. if you're someone who tends to like get that frustration, it's not necessarily a bad thing to get that frustration out, as long as it's not put out on your teammates. If it's only put out on yourself, you lose. Okay, you're frustrated. You go back on your chair, or like you maybe slam a little bit your desk and everything. What I tell my players every time I coach is like, this is not a bad thing. When you see tennis players, they actually literally smash their rackets on the ground and they destroy their rackets. That's what I was saying that is so impressive about Novak Djokovic, is like he's destroying his rackets, he's tilting for like 10 seconds, and then he's 100% focused on the game. But the thing is, like, if Novak Djokovic were to like just not show that frustration and keep that inside him, it would be impossible to refocus. So like the right thing to do with emotions is to accept them when they show up. And when you have emotions that are like distracting you from performance, well, like it's too high, your frustration is too high, the, you know, excitement is too high sometimes as well. And like, that's what I meant in terms like the seconds, sort of like activation levels and everything. You need to have strategies and mental skills in place to reset. The reset button, for instance, is something that like Novak Djokovic also uses. He has like his routines. If you watch tennis, it's very ritualized. They do stuff a lot, you know, touch a necklace, or like how many times they're going to touch the ball before they serve and everything, to reset and to be like, okay, I was frustrated. That's normal. That's something that happened. Okay, can I try to put my focus back on the game? And can I use that reset skill that I'm using? So if you cannot go in details about like your emotions and everything, I can't give you precise answers, but like that's the global answer of like excitement, frustration, excitement of pressure is all something that like the first step is really, really important. Cannot stress it enough, is to accept it. If you go against it, if you have the feeling of like, oh yeah, I shouldn't feel pressure because, you know, I'm a tough guy, you know, and tough guys don't feel pressure. I just show you like the toughest guys of all. The guys have been able to perform with millions of people watching in clutch situations, and they all say the same thing. Is like emotions are something, if you want to be the best, if you want to be mentally tough, you need to be able to accept them. And for some, it's harder than others. Like some of you guys probably have higher reactions to, you know, a mistake, and you're going to get frustrated more easily than another teammate. And that's fine. You have to accept yourself as who you are and everything. So I tell myself, it sounds a bit counterproductive, but when I go into teams, I'm like, I'm allowing players to show their frustration, you know, when they fuck up and everything, as long as it's not distracting your teammates, of course, and it's not directed towards your teammate. Like if your frustration is to say that your teammates, that they suck, obviously it's a bad thing. But if it's something just for yourself, and if you can mute your microphone and just be like, okay, let your frustration out, and then you're able to refocus, it's the best you can do. And that's the way to like stay on top of the game and not to have massive drop of performance. Definitely avoiding your emotions is the worst thing you can do, because you're not a machine. And even the best players are going to feel that pressure. Eventually, when you're going to higher and higher in your game as well, the pressure is going to get higher if you go into the top leagues and everything. So you cannot avoid it. It's impossible. You have to accept it.
I have a question.
Of course.
So, like you explained, when we are like, you know, being frustrated, and we are like, you know, frustrated that we lose, you gave really good, you know, examples and solutions to it, like how not to like feel frustrated. But I just want to ask, like, you know, sometimes you are on a stage, for example, like
Yeah.
this is like the split 2, and you know, and you want to
Yeah.
qualify for the ascension, and there is like, you know, this game, and you're so, like,
Yeah.
you know, if I fail right now, then until next year there is nothing, you know. And like usually I tell people that you should not, you know, you should not be afraid to lose and you should play to win, but that's a very
Yeah.
broad concept, right? Like then people
Yes.
ask like how to actually not be afraid to lose. So I just want to ask you, if it's like
Yeah.
that scenario, like very like, you know, the stakes are really, really high, how not to be
Yeah.
afraid to lose?
Okay. Yeah, it's a very good question, and it goes into stuff that usually you work on before, and obviously it's something like a problem that all team faces. The way I prepare players for that, there's a couple of things. The first thing is like, it's what I've sort of skipped because like we didn't have time to go over it. Is like, what really mindset do you have when you play? And we realized that the best athletes think about very, very long term, and it's down to shift their focus away from just I want to win games to I want to improve myself. And I have a goal of like trying my best to win, eventually, you know, like to win a lot. But when I'm really playing and when I'm really thinking about it, it's like how much better can I get? And it's what like the growth mindset when we talk about like growing yourself versus outcome only. If you really put your focus only on the outcome, which is sort of like what happens when you're in that tournament, and really you see it here, like you can't really avoid thinking about it. It's like, okay, if I lose, if I fail, we're not qualifying and we can't go over it. And growth mindset is something that you can cultivate in your team environment already, in scrims and in practice, about how do you handle failure. That's the number one thing. It's like in scrims, if you tend to be frustrated, if you tend not to allow in your team environment people to fail, to learn, naturally, when you're going to go on stage, you're also going to feel that I shouldn't fail. And fail is not part of the process. And actually, it's something that is sort of like hard to grasp because you go into a tournament, but when these guys, the best players, they go into tournaments and everything, they're like, even if it's like game on the line and everything, they're like, I'm allowing myself to fail. That's like one of the things that Michael Jordan talked about here, if you've read that. But again, Michael Jordan, you probably heard of him, the greatest of all time in basketball. And like the guy missed crucial shots. We always see him win and everything. We'll see highlight reels of him like winning and everything. He missed a lot. And in the beginning of his career, he failed a lot as well. And the guy, when he plays, is allowing himself to fail. And like, if you go into the mindset already of like, it can happen that things are going to go wrong and that I'm going to feel that fear and maybe I'm going to fail a play or like I'm not going to be aggressive enough, but that's fine. I'm not going to be blamed for it, first of all. And second, I have mental skills to help me like refocus on the game. It's already something that like is going to work extremely well. It's like you can put your attention on like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail. It's a really good thing to say. And it's more so, again, like the idea is like in this kind of very clutch situations, precisely where do you put your attention matters. Again, if your attention naturally is going to go towards like, I want to win, I should not fail. And this was like cultivating a growth mindset is good, first of all, and also have mental skills to cope with it, two things that are needed. And also in general, it's about, again, like on the mental skills, you can go back to that all the time, more or less. Where is going to be your attention? Like if you have a break, like let's say it's map 5, if that works like that in BO5s as well for you guys, and like it's 2-2 and it's going to be one last map. It's like, if all you guys talk about during the 5-minute breaks that you have is like, okay, guys, like, relax, don't feel the pressure, it's okay, or whatever. You're going to only talk about pressure. You're not going to talk about actually what do you need to do in game. Perhaps there's like in-game adjustments and everything to do. Perhaps there's like goals that you guys can remember individually as well, in terms of like, okay, I sort of fucked up here and there when I played these last 2 maps. My goal going into this game is going to be to do this better. And so again, if you focus on what you can do in the game, and you can allow your mind to be on the focus for like, what can I do in my game to make sure that we win? You're really focusing on the how do I win and not the I want to win. I want to win is not really a goal. It doesn't accomplish anything. Everybody wants to win, right? It's like, how do you win? That's what I try to establish in teams when they play, when they practice. And when eventually they play their match, is like, you need to focus on the how. If you focus on the how, you're going to be locked in the game. You're going to be good. And then you're going to realize, okay, actually I won. If you're really only focusing on like, I want to win, it's purposeless. You're not really, you're not getting better,
Yes.
And eventually, it's a discussion that we could have for an hour, but the idea is the same as mental skill training. Is like, where do you put your focus? Accept that, like, there is pressure indeed. We're going to feel it. That's all right. If you fail, that's okay. It's going to happen. It's a lot of pressure. Move on. Refocus on this goal, that goal. That's the best you can do to prepare yourself for like the highest moments of pressure. Because if you're not allowing yourself to fail in those moments, you're going to fail.
I think you really cleared my doubt because it is really good because recently I was coaching a team. We were in finals and we were kind of in like, we lost 2 maps and it was the 3rd map and I was trying to like, talk to the team that, let's it was another team. So I was just trying to talk to them. Let's talk how we are going to win. And they wanted like, we just want to chill, we want to like, not feel the pressure. We just want to believe in ourselves. And then they just, kind of didn't talk about the adjustments, which I thought that, we should have. So this really clears my doubt that, instead of just thinking, I don't want to feel the pressure, I just want to relax before that. It's more important that we talk about the adjustments so we are more logged in for the game. Like while relaxing can also be important, but talking about adjustments would be like the priority at that stage. Do you agree with that?
Definitely. Yeah. It's a problem that I see usually in teams where there has been no mental skill training, and I don't blame people for it because even myself, when I was playing, I didn't have access. Even like in the European Championship, I didn't have access to mental skill training. And the thing that we do the most, guys, naturally is to sort of like try to avoid the pressure. It's what we call like avoidance coping strategies. Instead of going face on and accepting the pressure and everything, and what your players are telling you, sadly, is not the right way. Like if you go into the match and you're like, I don't want to feel the pressure. you're not going to be able not to feel the pressure. Eventually, you're going to feel it. Like this sort of coping mechanism, when you avoid the pressure,
Yeah.
don't work as well, nearly as well as the ones where like I'm showing you right now in reset button, which is sort of like problem solving really. Or like you accept the problem as it is. Like I'm feeling pressure. I'm feeling the pressure. It's normal. Like what can I do to refocus? And sadly, the thing is like with your players, if you haven't had that discussion prior to the games of like, how do we deal with pressure? How do we deal with failure? Like, you know, can we accept it? Can we be the teams that are is like, okay, we accept it and everything? It's not going to work. Like, I don't know if you guys follow Counter-Strike at all.
I do. Like I just
yeah,
I
there's
just
like-
really like the example where, you know, Nico just bashes like the table,
Yeah.
like all they like literally curse across the tables. Like I just feel like sometimes in Valorant,
Yeah.
it cannot happen. Otherwise, you just get warned or like, you know, punished for that. Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah. You have to. I think if you're the coach and you have to set that structure right. I think it's like again like if it's just a showing of frustration, and you worked on your mental skills, and it's a way to refocus. And that frustration, everybody understand in your teams that like this guy's frustrated about himself, not the team. Then that's totally okay, and you should do it because again, like if you let that frustration inside, you don't deal with it, it's gonna come back and make you play worse eventually. And yeah, I was asking about Counter-Strike because one of my good friend Jack is coaching like or like helping the team on the mental side. The team that is doing like the best run of like Counter-Strike history right now, like Team Vitality, if you watch the games recently, and they've worked on that a lot. They've worked on like accepting and like they haven't lost an official in a while and everything, but they have worked on, you know, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in terms of like team values as well, but also on like accepting pressure and accepting that and everything. And how do you reset as a team? And how do you put your focus back on the game? How do you get your levels of activation right? Even if you're playing online and there is not much, you know, crowds and everything to go on, they still talked about like how do we hype ourselves up enough to be in the right state. So they worked on that, you know, and they worked on accepting failure and everything, and then they're winning a lot. But I think eventually, you know, when they're bound to like lose a game, I don't think it's going to matter to them that much. Like, you know, I've had a lot of discussion with him, and they're like, you know, sometimes they didn't even care about like they went on a streak of like I don't know how many wins, and they needed to do this or that to get the achievement that no team has ever done. They were like, we don't care. What we want to do is be the best version that we can be. So again, it's really like an example of like the growth mindset of like they're like, how can we be the best we can be versus of just getting results. That's the best you can do when you shift the focus of your team more towards like what can I do and how do I win rather than I want to win. So yeah, that's definitely the best you can do as well in terms of preparing for pressure and accepting it. Any other questions, guys?
No, not from my side.
Okay.
I just have like one small question. Like this is something which I learned from like another coach. They shared like a picture with me, like where they showed like, you know, there should also be like a good stress level. So you shouldn't have like over stress. Otherwise you get into like distress zone or burnout, or you should not have under pressure, you know, like comfort zone or boredom. Like you should have like a growth zone pressure. So I just want to ask like how to identify like I am in the growth zone pressure, like stress level, or like, you know, so that I am in the right stress level, like I want to make sure that. How do I make sure?
So I think what he was referring to is probably there's multiple ways, like depending on the coaches, to talk about it. When I talk about like this, for instance, the activation check, it's really being like, you know, I use the scale of 1 to 10. I think it's a good way to represent it of like your activation, your stress level, sort of, or like your just energy. We can talk about energy, right? Say for some players, maybe the energy, the best level is going to be at a 9. Players that really loves to get hyped to play the best. Others really like to be focused. Maybe it's going to be at a 6, and they're not going to talk that much, but they're going to play their best. So you have to identify. It's really about awareness of yourself. It's like you have to identify, what do I do when I'm in the zone? Physically and mentally, where is my game? Or like how confident do I feel? What do I do in game? Am I able to like analyze well and everything? So you basically what I go through with players, like you note everything down. And if you don't know, you sort of have to go through an official and think about it and reflect back on it on like, okay, I think this game I was overactivated because I realized, you know, my shoulders were really tensed. And then at some point I realized I actually wasn't really breathing. You know, my breathing was really stalled. I was rushing my communication. You can even rewatch, you record the game and then you rewatch it and you're like, okay, I actually rushed my communication here a lot. Or I tunnel vision, I didn't think about the macro or anything. So you note everything that's happening when you're overactivated. So when you're over your zone, basically, or when you're under your zone, what's happening as well. So that's what I've done here. And the example, it's a real example that I gave you of a Call of Duty player. We have little time, so it was only the beginning. We focused on 2-3 things. Okay, what's happening to me when I am overactivated? I rush my communications. I start challenging everything. So it means I start taking one with ones that I don't need to take, or what happens when I'm underactivated. And then it's the same thing with the mental skill. The reset is first awareness of oh shit, I'm overactivated, underactivated during the game. And then, okay, what can I do to regulate myself back to the zone? If that answers your question.
Yes, it does.
There's also concepts, of course, of how do you transform sort of that stress into something positive, which is something that I don't think we really have time to get into, but we know the symptoms sort of stress. It's usually before the game, when the pressure that you feel before the game, which is horrible because you can't do much about it. You're not playing. You're just thinking about the game and you're getting stressed about it. How do you sort of convert that fear into excitement? It's one of the work that you can do as well, but it takes a bit of while for players to get used to it. Because the symptoms, if you think about it, are really the same. It's your energy goes up, your heart beats faster and everything. To be fair, if you're excited or if you're fearful, it's the same sort of symptoms. So you can, in a way, trick your mind to be more in a mindset where you're excited for the pressure to come rather than fearful of it. That takes a little bit of practice, but perhaps that's one of what your coach was talking about as well. I'm not sure if I'm not seeing the templates myself right.
Yeah, no, you're right. Right now, what you talked about, I think that's something. I didn't talk to the coach, but I got the image that he shared with one of my students. So he was kind of sharing me, the experience and all. But yeah, you answered my question. Thank you so much.
No worries. Any other questions, guys? I think otherwise we're good. We're going a bit over time, but again, I think it's good if you guys have questions. All right. So again, I will send it. Did you guys get maybe I'll send it in the chat here. Did you guys get the other presentation about routines that we did the other time? Did you get access to it? Otherwise,
yes.
I'll send you the link right now.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll send you the link for this one as well. If you want to check, there's one thing that we skipped on the last slides about growth mindset versus outcome mindset. It's again Kobe Bryant talking about it. I think it's very interesting. It's really about how do you view success over time and not being stuck in that mindset of all I want to do is win. All I want to do is learn LPs, even though obviously it's what we want. I'm also being on the focus of how do I get there actually. Mental skill training, being a better teammate, focusing on what's actually growing in the game and everything. So I think I can share it here. Yeah. So
was he in the podcast?
Yeah.
The Kobe Bryant.
Sorry.
Kobe Bryant, was he in podcast with Jay Shah?
In broadcast, you mean?
No, podcast.
Oh, the podcast. He was, he was in the podcast, I think, and this the second link that I've sent you is through an interview. You can, through the links that I've sent you, you can get access to podcast and everything to listen to what he has to say. And if you're interested in that, I can give you another, there's a lot of podcasts, NBA players or that kind of stuff talking about frustration.
I like to watch the.
Can you send me on Discord? I've added you, and then I can share it with them as well.
Yeah, I'll send you a couple of links, and then you guys can get through it. YouTube links or just find the podcast is fairly easy and everything. I'll send you a couple of resources about that, about accepting failure and about being tough under pressure and accepting your feelings and that kind of stuff. Definitely, if you're interested. All right. Okay, guys. Well, I'll see you in a couple of days for the next sessions. We can talk about going more in depth about what makes a great player. Autonomy is one thing that I always, talk about. How that gets you to the next level. We can link that to mental skills and everything as well, so we can get into details. If you ever feel like you have questions about the previous stuff that we talked about, feel free to bring it up eventually as well.
Yeah, right. I've also added you on Discord, so from Kunal.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that. I'll accept you and send you the links. All right.
Yeah, thank
I'll
you so
see you
much.
guys in a couple of days then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
brother.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Very much.
Yes. Bye bye.
Bye.
अरे एक जी
हाँ
आपको मिल गया लिंक तो भेज दो ना फिर मुझे
हाँ
भी वो
done,
पॉडकास्ट का
हाँ मैं भेजता हूँ
ठीक है
लो बाय बाय